You guys had a lot of amazing questions in my last UKCA toy testing video. Today, I'm going to try my best to answer them. We're going to cover topics such as, do scrunchies and coasters also need testing? Do I need to make 2 different prototypes? How long should we be keeping our testing records? And lastly, why is there not more awareness of the toy testing within the crochet community? There's a lot to unpack, so let's get started. So before I get started, please do show your support by liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel so I can carry on making these videos for you guys. And just for context, I had quite a few of the same questions, so I've tried to kind of combine the questions into more general ones so I can try and answer as many of them as I can rather than doing each individual question. So hopefully I have answered as many questions as I can in this video, but if not, if you do have any further questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them or potentially do a part 2 for this video. Before we get started, I just need to do a disclaimer. All the information in this video is not legally binding. I am not a lawyer or a testing authority by any sorts. The information in this video is simply from my research as a fellow UK crocheter. So please do make sure you do your own research and double check everything to make sure you're properly covering yourself. I am only human, I can make mistakes, so don't take my words for gospel. Hopefully this video is more as a useful kind of research tool for you all. So let's jump into the questions. The first question we have is, how long should I keep my crochet toy safety testing records? Is 10 years enough? So yes, 10 years is the minimum amount of time required from the UK safety testing regulations. And this applies from the moment the toy is placed on the market. So for example, once you've sold it or once you've put it on offer for sale. And this is a huge part of the testing process because if an issue arises later down the line, for example, a safety incident, the trading standards and the court are going to ask you to provide that technical file. And if you're unable to provide this technical file, you are going to be seen as non-compliant, even if you've gone through the whole rigmarole of testing that plushie. So what you want to make sure you include in your records is your risk assessments, your test results. So this includes your tension, your flammability, your wash tests, maybe your torque tests. So all of the results from that all need to be within that file. Also a list of all the materials and their safety data sheets. So everything that's making up your toy or your plushie, for example, your safety eyes, your stuffing, maybe safety noses, even embroidery thread, all need to be listed out into your records and all need to have a safety file. This comes under the EN 71-3, the chemical safety part of the toy testing, and the yarn you choose should be able to provide you with that safety data sheet that you can slot into your records. What I will do is potentially another video of all the different UK yarns that actively provide this certification. So comment below if you would like me to do a separate video for that. Also in your records, you need to keep a copy of the labels you use and a record of those. And then lastly, your declaration of conformity. Now, it's really essential to keep all of these records physically, but you can also keep them digitally by scanning them in and keeping them on your computer. But like the question said, is you need to be keeping your records for a minimum of 10 years. So the next question we have is, I'm in the US. Are there legal requirements for toy testing there, or is this mainly a UK thing? So in regards to the UKCA testing, this is specifically for the UK and I think areas of Europe. I am not currently clued up on the US laws in terms of toy testing. However, if you would like me to do some digging and do some research, comment below and I can certainly do a separate video for US testing laws. As for the process, we all know the UK likes to be difficult. So the process will certainly be different in the US. However, the principle is the exact same. Every handmade toy or every toy that's put on the market should be safe to play and use. But yeah, this video is specifically for UK crocheters or handmade toy businesses. But if you would like more information on kind of different countries, I will certainly do my best to research those. The third question we have is, why isn't there more awareness about toy safety testing in the crochet community? Now, this is a really, really poignant one and a definite valid question that I do often ask myself as well. And I'm sure many other UK crocheters can agree with this. There is definitely not a huge amount of awareness or information regarding this. And I think there's 2 main reasons for this. The first being that crafting is often seen as a hobby. It's very easy for crafters to kind of move from hobbyists into selling their creations without actually realizing they fall under kind of protection laws. So I think the main one is that people just start by doing a simple hobby and then very easily transfer into selling them. Number two, quite simply, the law is confusing as bleep, basically. The law is very complex and very confusing. It is written in very technical language and very hard to understand. And yeah, I'll hold my hands up and say that is exactly kind of how I felt when I first looked into it. I was just like, what on earth is going on here? And it definitely does lead to kind of this free-for-all on platforms like Etsy and other marketplaces that are just kind of flooded with thousands of handmade toys that are probably not tested, and it kind of creates this sense of, okay, well, if they're doing it, it should be fine, I'll do it too. I do feel like the awareness is starting to grow, and hopefully videos like this are helping that. I feel like more people are taking the time to research and find out and to also spread the awareness. All I would suggest is if you see kind of fellow UK crocheters on Instagram or on any other social medias, even in person at markets, I think it would just be good to have a conversation to say, are you aware of the UKCA testing process? How do you find it? And just start that conversation, because the more people that are aware of it, the more information that's out there, the safer our handmade creations are going to be. Okay, so the next one is, I've already sold a couple of plushies without testing because I didn't know. Am I in trouble? So without scaremongering anyone and causing a breakdown, selling toys, regardless of if they're handmade or not, without the UKCA marking or without the testing is technically illegal. Now, before we're scaring everyone and getting overwhelmed, in reality, trading standards don't usually go after kind of one-off hobby sales. They're more concerned with active businesses that are consistently selling toys and that have potentially received complaints. Like I said, none of this is legal advice, but what I would do as a fellow crocheter is to not panic. The past is in the past, what's done is done. But what I would do is immediately stop selling until you're compliant. Get your testing and documentation in place before listing again. And if you're ever inspected, showing that you have corrected your practices and that you're now compliant will definitely be seen as a positive. Number 5, do stitched on eyes, noses, and even the yarn itself need testing. So yes, like we've previously said, every component of the toy is considered part of the safety testing and needs testing. So for example, if you have like a stitched eye or nose, these will need to be checked that they can't be pulled off. The way to do this is potentially a torque test. You have your tension test, which requires you to kind of pull at the yarn firmly and at features such as the limbs to ensure that they don't detach. Flammability test is obviously a big one to make sure that the yarn doesn't ignite or travel too quickly on the toy. And a big question kind of within this question is, a lot of people say that, do you still need to do the flammability test if the yarn has been tested? And the question is yes, the yarn will have been tested as part of the chemical safety, which we're about to come on to. But what you're testing with your flammability test is how your toy, as it's made up, how the flame travels through your toy. So for example, the flames for my bear here, my zombie bear, will travel differently to just the green yarn or the purple yarn on its own, if that makes sense. So you're looking at kind of how the toy in whole, including its stuffing and all its compartments, is undergoing all the safety tests. And lastly, chemical safety, like we've kind of touched on, this is usually covered by your kind of material manufacturers, so the yarn brand or the stuffing. They are usually EN71 compliant if you find the right ones, and they'll be able to provide you with the safety data sheet. But even if you hand stitch the eye or the nose or even potential other stitching like on my zombie bear, they all count as detachable parts, so they will need to withstand the same stress as safety eyes. Number 6, 6. Do items like scrunchies, coasters, or display-only plushies need testing? So it all very much depends on how the item is marked. Scrunchies and coasters are not toys. They're not really accidentally mistook for being toys. So I would personally say the UKCA law doesn't apply to scrunchies and coasters. Obviously, they still need to kind of apply to general product safety regulations, so not cause any choking hazards, or I think the dies can't run and things like that. But in general, they can't be mistaken for a toy, so they don't need to be UKCA tested. The rule of thumb is if something potentially looks like a toy, a child could mistake it as a toy and potentially play with it. So you can't just label something display only and kind of expect a child to understand that. Display only plushies work if they are literally mounted onto something and cannot be played with or moved from that mount. Or whether it's in like a frame, you can have like a plushie within a frame that can go on the wall. That would count as not needing to be UKCA'd. But if something looks like a toy or a child would want to play with it or mistakenly play with it, then it will need to go safety testing because that is being played with. Then it will need to undergo safety testing to avoid any incidents. Number 7, what information needs to go on UKCA labels and where can I get them made? So this sort of information is normally provided within the kind of testing pamphlets that you can buy and download. But to summarize, your toy labels must include the UKCA mark. It needs to be a minimum of 5 centimeters small or big. Basically, it needs to be a minimum of 5 centimeters so that people can clearly see it. It needs to also include your business name and address so people can locate you. It needs to have the unique product ID or the batch number somewhere on the label, and also most importantly some warning symbols or words. So for example, not suitable for children under 36 months or choking hazards, etc, etc. So it needs those warnings if necessary. So I personally designed mine on Canva. I just went on Canva templates and typed in tag labels and then designed them with all the relevant information. I have them as swing tags that I attach to my plushies. And if you're going to do swing tags, you need to make sure that you add on the labels that the customer keeps the swing tag for reference later. If you're going to do kind of sewn in woven labels, you can get these from kind of like the Dutch label shop, possibly Etsy suppliers. Wonder Label I think is another one. These can easily be added onto your toys, but again will also need to be kind of tested by tension or torque to ensure it doesn't come unattached, to ensure it doesn't detach from the toy. So if you are going to do woven labels, I would suggest ordering them, attaching them to your prototype and checking how you're going to attach them and making sure it doesn't detach from that prototype during the safety testing. So this is an example of my swing tags that I use. As you can see, just on the front is just kind of simple design. Here is where I would probably write the batch ID and the order number of the toy I was putting it on. So there's plenty of space to kind of put that information. On the back, I have got, as you can see, made in the UK. That's just an optional if you would like. Please retain for future reference. I've got all the information about washing it, the UKCA symbol at the minimum size of 5 centimeters, and all the other warnings and information on the back too. So that's kind of a really simple swing tag that I use. Like I said, you can do woven tags, but you need to make sure that it's got all that information on it as well. And then I simply just hole punched them and added this little tag from Amazon. I can list them below. I am also shortly going to be making UKCA swing tag templates, which will be available on my Etsy, where you guys will just be able to purchase this template, input your information, and then be able to personally print your own labels. And that's just to kind of make sure that you know you've got all the relevant information on your labels. So more information on that will come hopefully later, and keep an eye out for that. I'll drop it in the description if it is ready to go. But it's basically just a simple template that you guys can use to input all of your information and customize your labels. And it's a lot easier to use and kind of peace of mind for you guys that you've got the right information on your labels. So be sure to check that out. Number 8 is, do I need 2 prototypes for testing? So I would say, to be extra sure, yes, I would do 2 separate prototypes. One for the unwashed kind of mechanical testing, the pulling, twisting, tension, seam strength kind of testing. And then you also need one washed and dried for the flammability test. The reason for the 2 different prototypes is you need to see how the toy undergoes washing, how the toy's kind of safety behavior differs once it's washed, and does it have any kind of detrimental effects. You can test the same toy twice, so some makers do that, but like I say, it is just best practice to have 2 separate ones. And again, trading standards may possibly ask you to provide evidence for the 2 separate prototypes. You basically just want to prove that your toy is still safe once it inevitably gets washed by parents. So number 9 is a big one that gets asked a lot. If I use a pattern from someone else who has a CE or UKCA certificate and I use the same materials, do I still need to test? And this is a big yes. So even if you've used the same pattern and you've used the same material, and that person has safety tested that toy, that means they have safety tested for themselves. So we know what handmade toys are like. They differ from crafter to crafter. For example, I might have a different tension to Sally down the road, which will have a different effect on the flammability or potentially the tension test or the torque test because of the differences in kind of stitches that we have. So even though you have the same materials and the same pattern, your actual crochet and stitches and kind of tension of the stitches and how you make your plushies is going to be different from the person next to you. So overall, that's going to affect the makeup of your plushie. Even though it's from the same material and has the same chemical setup, the actual structure of it will be different. So you're testing how your individual plushie is made. And the law specifically places the responsibility on the person who puts the finished toy on the market. So for example, if you're a shop owner and you're getting toys from a handmade business, the responsibility is still on the handmade toy maker, not on the shop itself, because the handmade toy maker is the one who has created and designed and made the finished toy to be sold. So it is down to anyone who has created the toy to undergo the safety testing. And the certification for a pattern or even a finished toy made by someone else can't be transferred to you. Number 10 is, if I add small plushies like these or ladybirds to my crochet bouquets, do they still need testing too? So each plushie, I guess, for example, the bees and ladybirds attached to the bouquet could definitely still be treated as a toy, especially if they're detachable. So the main thing is, if they're detachable, a child could mistake them for being toys, accidentally play on them, and then they'll still need to be safety tested because they meet that choking hazard, and they'll need to meet that durability requirement. The kind of only way to make sure they don't need testing, if that's what you're going for, is to make sure you're selling them purely as ornamental bouquets. And you'll need to make sure that they're clearly marked as decoration and that they can't be detached from the bouquet, if that makes sense. They basically need to be reasonably made, created, and marketed as decoration so that there's no mistaking that they're toys. Any chance that the plushies can be kind of detached or taken away from the bouquet, the trading standards will consider them to be toys. I know this is the thing, it is kind of like a minefield when it comes to that sort of thing, and things like that is definitely like a grey area. So I would definitely advise you to do your own research with that sort of thing. But I personally would say, yeah, if they're mounted and if they're unable to come away from the bouquet, I don't feel like there's any chance of them being mistaken as a toy. Number 11 kind of follows on quite nicely from, but can I avoid testing by advertising my plushies as for display only? And this is a really big one. Simple answer is no. Just because you say that they're not a toy doesn't mean that 5 minutes later they're not going to be mistaken as a toy or used as a toy. The law kind of only considers the likely use by the consumers or the clients or the customers. The law only considers kind of the likely use by consumers or customers. they don't really consider the wording on your displays or your labels. So even if a kind of soft crochet bear is labeled as an ornament, if a kid was to come in, they would still likely want to play with it, because that's just what kids do. They naturally want to grab and touch and play with things kind of in their vicinity. The only time display only works is when the object is clearly not suitable for play. For example, like a glass ornament, or like I said before, a plushie mounted in a frame. So yeah, if you're going for display only, you need to make them basically not playable and simply just display only. So for example, I would need to put my zombie bear into a frame and have him be able to be mounted onto a wall that can't be detached. He can't be taken out of the frame and played with. So yeah, that's the kind of only way around it. I couldn't just put him on a market or on Etsy and say, yeah, this isn't a toy, don't play with it. And lastly, can I do the UKCA self-certification myself? And where do I get a pack? So yes, if you want to be extra sure and you're making loads and loads of these toys, or for example, you're able to batch make toys, I would suggest getting them kind of factory tested and properly manufactured tested. If you're a crocheter like myself and you're not actually able to make hundreds and thousands of these toys, you can self-certify. So in my previous videos, I do kind of touch upon this a bit more, but I personally use the Handmade Toys Collective UKCA testing pack. Obviously there are other kind of packs available. That is just the first one I found, and it was really helpful and really useful, and their website contains loads of kind of frequently asked questions as well. So they're just a really good one to go with, and like I say, my video kind of touches more on what their pack includes, but you can self-certify. Like I said at the beginning of the video, your self-certification needs to involve all of the records that I mentioned in question 1, your risk assessments, photos, test reports, material lists, etc, etc. So most small handmade business owners do self-certify, and this is allowed by law, and you won't need to technically send your handmade plushies to any labs unless you want to be extra double, triple sure. So again, I'll drop the link to the pack that I bought in the description below, but do feel free to use kind of other pack options if you'd prefer. So just to summarize, the few key points of today's video is: make sure you're doing the test and keeping your records. Keep the records for a minimum of 10 years, whether that be physically or digitally. Label your toys correctly with the UKCA labels and relevant information. And lastly, remember that it is you as the seller who is legally responsible to safety test your toys, not the pattern designer or the supplier. I hope I've been able to answer most of your questions. If you do have any further questions, be sure to leave a comment and I'll try and make a part 2. And make sure to like and subscribe to not miss out on more content like today's video. See you in the next one.